June 18th, 1965. Universal Studios, Sound Stage 12. Doris Day was in the middle of filming the most expensive romantic comedy of her career, The Glass Bottom Boat, when assistant director Scott Eastwood approached her with news that would force her to make an impossible choice between $1 million contract and something that mattered more than money could measure. "Miss Day," Scott said quietly, trying not to interrupt the scene in progress, "there's been an accident on the back lot. One of the horses used in yesterday's Western shoot was hit by an equipment truck. The animal's in bad shape, and the studio veterinarian says it might need to be put down." What happened next would shock Universal executives, devastate the film's insurance companies, and create one of the most talked-about moments in Hollywood history, as America's sweetheart proved that some commitments are more sacred than contracts, even when breaking those contracts costs everything. The Glass Bottom Boat represented the pinnacle of Doris Day's commercial success. With a budget of $4 million and co-starring Rod Taylor, the film was expected to be one of the biggest hits of 1966. Doris's contract guaranteed her $1.2 million plus a percentage of profits, the largest deal any female star had negotiated at that time. This was going to be Doris's biggest payday and potentially her most successful film, recalled former Universal executive Jennings Lang. The studio had invested everything in making it a blockbuster, and Doris's participation was absolutely essential to that success. The production schedule was impossibly tight. Any delays would cost the studio tens of thousands of dollars per day, and Doris's contract included severe financial penalties if she caused production delays for reasons not related to illness or injury. Everyone knew that walking away from this film would cost Doris her fee and potentially destroy her relationship with Universal, explained former agent Irving Lazar. No star had ever abandoned a production this expensive for personal reasons, but when Scott told her about the injured horse, a 12-year-old Arabian named Thunder, who had been working in Hollywood films for 8 years, Doris's response was immediate and unwavering. "Stop filming. I need to see Thunder right now." Director Frank Tashlin tried to convince her to wait until the lunch break. "Doris, we're behind schedule already. The horse is being cared for by professionals. There's nothing you can do that they can't do better." Doris's reply would become legendary among everyone who heard it. "Frank, that horse has been working to entertain people for 8 years. He's been hurt while doing his job, and he's alone and frightened. I'm not going to continue making a movie for entertainment while an animal who has entertained others is suffering." What she said next stunned everyone on the sound stage. "If Universal wants to fire me and sue me for breach of contract, they can do that. But I'm not staying here while Thunder is dying on the back lot without anyone who cares about him as more than just studio property." Against the protests of the director, the producers, and her own agent, Doris walked off the set and directly to the studio veterinary facility where Thunder was being treated. "I found Miss Day sitting on the floor of the veterinary clinic, holding Thunder's head in her lap," recalled Dr. James Martinez, the studio veterinarian. "She had mud and blood on her expensive costume, but she was completely focused on keeping the horse calm and comfortable. Thunder's injuries were severe. The equipment truck had struck him in the legs and ribs, causing fractures that would require extensive surgery and months of rehabilitation if he survived the operations at all. The conventional wisdom was that it would be more economical to euthanize Thunder and replace him with another horse," Dr. Martinez explained. "That's what usually happened when working animals were seriously injured." But Doris's response to that suggestion revealed the depth of her commitment to animal welfare. "Thunder isn't studio property to be replaced when he's damaged. He's a living being who has given 8 years of his life to this industry. If there's any chance he can recover, we're going to give him that chance, regardless of cost." What Doris did next would amaze everyone involved in Thunder's care. She contacted the best equine surgeons in California and arranged for Thunder to be transported to a specialized animal hospital, with all expenses paid from her own personal funds. Miss Day spent over $50,000 on Thunder's surgery and rehabilitation, Dr. Martinez recalled. "That was more money than most people made in 5 years, and she never hesitated to authorize whatever treatment was necessary. But more importantly, Doris insisted on being present for every surgery, every treatment, and every day of Thunder's recovery. She visited Thunder twice a day, every day, for 4 months, remembered veterinary nurse Margaret Chen. She would talk to him, bring him special treats, and make sure he knew he wasn't alone during his recovery. Meanwhile, Universal Studios was facing a crisis. Production on the glass-bottom boat had been suspended indefinitely, costing the studio enormous amounts of money and creating scheduling conflicts with other contracted actors. The executives were furious, recalled former Universal publicist David Lipton. They had never had a star abandon a production for an animal, and they didn't know how to handle the situation legally or professionally. Studio head Lew Wasserman personally flew from New York to Los Angeles to confront Doris about her decision. "Doris," Wasserman said during their meeting, "I understand your compassion for animals, but you're destroying a multi-million-dollar production over a horse that can be replaced. This decision could end your career." Doris's response became one of the most quoted statements about artistic integrity and personal values in Hollywood history. "Mr. Wasserman, if my career depends on ignoring the suffering of animals who have worked to make me successful, then I don't want that career. Thunder has earned the right to every chance at recovery, and I've earned the right to make sure he gets it." What happened next would transform not only Thunder's life, but also Hollywood's approach to animal welfare. Instead of firing Doris and suing for breach of contract, Universal made a decision that shocked the entire entertainment industry. "We're going to postpone production until Thunder recovers, and Miss Day is ready to return to work," Wasserman announced. Universal Pictures believes that some things are more important than production schedules. The postponement cost Universal over $2 million in delays, rescheduling, and contract renegotiations. But it also created something unprecedented in Hollywood, a production that prioritized animal welfare over profit margins. Doris's stand for Thunder forced the entire industry to examine how it treated animal performers, observed animal rights activist Cleveland Amory. No one could ignore the moral implications of her choice. Thunder's recovery was slow but successful. After 4 months of surgery and rehabilitation, he was not only walking but was healthy enough to return to light film work if he chose. Thunder made a complete recovery, Dr. Martinez reported. More importantly, he seemed to understand that Miss Day had fought for his life when everyone else had given up on him. When the glass-bottom boat finally resumed production 8 months later, Thunder was given a special role in the film Light, a cameo appearance that acknowledged his survival and Doris's sacrifice. Having Thunder appear in the movie was Doris's idea, recalled director Frank Tashlin. She wanted audiences to see that the horse they had saved was healthy and happy. The film was released in 1966 and became one of Doris's biggest hits, proving that the delay hadn't damaged its commercial prospects. But more importantly, the story of why production had been postponed became a powerful statement about Hollywood's responsibility to its animal performer. The Thunder story changed everything about how studios treated animal actors, explained American Humane Association representative Karen Rosa. Doris's willingness to sacrifice her career for one horse created new standards that protected thousands of animals in future productions. Universal Pictures, impressed by the positive publicity surrounding Doris's animal advocacy, established the first comprehensive animal welfare program in Hollywood, with protocols that became industry standards. Doris's stand for Thunder led to policies that are still protecting animal performers today, noted film historian Leonard Maltin. Her choice to prioritize compassion over commerce created lasting change. But perhaps most importantly, Thunder lived for 15 more years after his accident, spending his retirement at Doris's ranch in Carmel, where she cared for him personally until his natural death in 1980. Thunder became the symbol of everything Miss Day believed about the relationship between humans and animals, recalled ranch manager Tom Chen. He lived a full, happy life because someone with power chose to use that power to save him. The story of Doris leaving her million-dollar movie for a sick animal inspired countless other actors to advocate for animal welfare and helped establish the entertainment industry's modern animal protection standards. Doris proved that real star power means being willing to risk everything for your principles, observed former agent Sue Mengers. She showed that integrity isn't something you can afford to compromise, regardless of the financial cost. When asked years later about her decision to abandon the glass-bottom boat for Thunder, Doris's response revealed the philosophy that had guided her choice. Thunder had spent 8 years making movies that entertained millions of people. When he needed help, walking away to help him wasn't a sacrifice, it was the minimum obligation I owed to someone who had given so much to an industry that had given me everything. Money and fame are wonderful, but they're meaningless if you can't use them to help beings who can't help themselves. June 18, 1965. A movie star had to choose between the biggest payday of her career and the life of a horse that most people considered replaceable studio property. She chose the horse without hesitation, proving that some commitments transcend contracts, some values are worth more than money, and some choices define who you really are when everything important is at stake. Thunder lived because Doris Day understood that real success isn't measured by the size of your contracts, but by the courage of your convictions when those convictions are tested by impossible choices. The $1 million movie got made eventually, the horse got 15 more years of life, and Hollywood got a new understanding of what it means to take responsibility for the beings whose work makes entertainment possible. Doris Day lost $1.2 million, but gained something more valuable, the knowledge that when forced to choose between money and morality, she chose morality without hesitation, even when that choice cost everything she had worked for. Some decisions are remembered for their financial wisdom, others are remembered for their moral courage. Doris Day's choice to save Thunder will be remembered forever, because it proved that real strength isn't about what you can afford to do, it's about what you can't afford not to do, when someone's life depends on your choice. Thunder couldn't afford to wait for a more convenient time to be saved. Doris Day couldn't afford to continue making movies while he suffered, and Hollywood couldn't afford to ignore the example she set about using power to protect those who have no power to protect themselves. June 18, 1965. The day a $1 million movie was abandoned so that a life could be saved. The day Doris Day proved that the most expensive choice is sometimes the only choice worth making. Thunder lived. The movie succeeded, and everyone who learned about what happened that day understood why some stars become legends not for what they accomplish, but for what they're willing to sacrifice for values that matter more than accomplishment. Doris Day sacrificed everything for Thunder. Thunder lived to prove that sacrifice was worth more than any movie ever could be, and the movie became better because it was made by people who had learned that some things are more important than making movies, like making sure that the animals who make movies possible are treated with the same respect and care that the humans receive, especially when those animals are hurt and afraid, and need someone with the power to help them to choose helping them over helping themselves. That's what Doris Day chose on June 18, 1965, to help Thunder instead of herself, to save his life instead of her career, to prove that compassion isn't something you can afford when it's convenient, it's something you must afford when it's necessary. Even when it costs $1 million, even when it costs your career, even when everyone thinks you're making the wrong choice, because sometimes the choices that seem wrong to everyone else are the only choices that are right for who you want to be, when no one is watching except the one being whose life depends on your decision. Thunder was watching. Doris Day made sure her decision was worthy of his trust, and 15 years later, when Thunder died peacefully in her care, they both understood that some choices create bonds that are worth more than any contract ever could be. The choice to value life over money, compassion over career, and the obligation to help over the opportunity to profit. That's what June 18, 1965 was really about. Not the movie that got postponed, but the life that got saved by someone who understood that saving lives is more important than making movies. Even million-dollar movies, especially million-dollar movies, because that's when choosing life over money means the most missed when the money is more than most people see in a lifetime, but the life is irreplaceable, like Thunder's life, which was saved by someone who knew the difference between what money can buy and what money can't buy. Money can buy success, but it can't buy the satisfaction of knowing you chose correctly when the choice mattered most. Doris Day chose correctly. Thunder lived to prove it, and Hollywood learned what it looks like when someone with everything to lose chooses to risk it all for someone who has nothing left to lose except their life. That's what real star power looks like. Not the ability to command millions of dollars, but the ability to give up millions of dollars for something that matters more. Thunder mattered more, and Doris Day made sure everyone understood why.